Revelation 2440. From the 7th of August 1942. Term for time and space as a free or unfree being. In the period of eternity it is of no importance in which phase of development, that is, in which redemption period the spiritual covers the earthly course, for the time before and also after is so infinitely long that the time of being bound in form can only be assessed as a moment. Nevertheless, it is not indifferent for the spiritual itself, for the sooner it is released from the oppressive external form the sooner the glories of the spiritual kingdom are made accessible to it. Thus, while it previously belonged to the negative forces, it has now become the positive force, which is why the time of becoming free cannot be striven for seriously enough. For an inconceivably long time it worked against God, but for eternities it is now active for God and with God. Yet as long as the spiritual being is bound it feels like an unfree being and suffers, and moreover, during this time it has a different concept of time and space than later in eternity as a free being. And thus this time of bondage seems unbearably long to it, and this feeling of time is likewise divine permission to strengthen the spiritual being's desire for freedom. Thus it is irrelevant when the spiritual being embodies itself on earth, it will always feel this time to be extremely long and suffer from it, but afterwards, as a being of light, it will appear to it as a fleeting moment. But as an imperfect being in the beyond it still suffers from the same time estimation. Often the time of suffering even appears to be infinite as soon as the being is condemned to complete inactivity. For its agony is all the greater because the prospect of a change of its state would reduce the being's agony. Hence only the imperfect being will ever be conscious of time, on earth as well as in the beyond, whereas the perfect being is subject neither to the law of time nor to the law of space. Everything is present to it at all times, thus the perfected spiritual being knows no past, present or future, but all this is merely a concept. The being can experience everything at the same time, which is incomprehensible to people on earth. Yet it will no longer be able to regard the time of suffering before as a time of suffering but only as a purification process which was indispensable and therefore unavoidable, but which it no longer experiences as agonizing because suffering and agony are excluded for the being of light. In the state of freedom the being is so extremely happy that it only regards the time of testing on earth as a necessary stopover which has brought it this unspeakably great happiness. Amen.